we've asked our clients a question over the last several months through our technology saying, if we went back to a traditional workforce, COVID's gone, how many of you would be interested in working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 in an office setting? And of the thousands of employees that we have asked, fewer than 10% have said that they want to go back to a traditional work setting. So I think that's the game changer.
To kind of add on that, I've always believed that culture is the collective actions of what we do, right? And what's being
right.
The actions that we take. And to take it a step further back, it's about the values that the team and leadership have assigned. And in my opinion, that's been a huge driver in building culture, is that it gives people, when the mission and vision of the organization is clear, and the values by which the team is being measured against how we act and how those actions align with what we say, that is really, in my opinion, what creates healthy cultures.
I think the conversation about caring and love, and these are words we don't use enough in the workplace. Maybe we feel like it's that separation between these are sort of relationship human characters that live sort of more in the family. But I actually think these words, we need to start to become more and more comfortable with it in the workplace, and really care about those around us, because it's tough times, and times aren't going to get all that easier in a lot of ways. But it's, as we know, the ideas of togetherness, the collective is more powerful than the individual.
Welcome to the Coffee with Friends, an Espresso Shot of HR Disruption podcast, where I talk with business leaders, authors, and HR disruptors on how to build amazing company cultures centered around purpose, people-first mindsets, and love for one another. The podcast is part of the Human Rebellion platform, a grassroots community of conscious leaders and HR rebels who want to build a better workplace together. To learn more, visit www.humanrebellion.com. This month, our guests are Delise Crimmins, Chief Culture Officer at the Culture Think Tank, Dan Riley, co-founder of RADICL, and Derek Lundsten, President and CEO of LifeGuides. We are discussing the formula to human-centric culture change, which is about meeting the whole person where they are. Let's get to it.
Hi guys, I'm very happy to see you. Derek,
hey, Stefan.
Dan,
hey, Stefan.
Good to see you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So I know that Delise and Derek, you know each other, but Dan, you don't know any of those two. So maybe we can start with you, Dan, since you're a newbie on the team here. If you want to give a quick overview of who you are and what you do, and then we'll go around, and Delise will be next and Derek third.
Absolutely. I'm the stranger in the coffee shop. I'm the strange guy that comes down and sits next to everyone, and it's like, why are you sitting next to me? Yeah. Happy to be here. And nice to meet everybody. Stefan and I know each other, and Delise and Derek, nice to meet you both. So real fast, I've been working in the HR tech industry for 20 plus years. I founded a company called Modern Survey when I was the grand old or young age of 29, built that up for 16, 17 years, sold that to Aon Hewitt, and then hung around Aon for a couple of years. And I just founded my next startup company called RADICL, RADICL, so I'm missing the A. And our focus is really on moving beyond employee engagement, focusing on the whole person experience. So it's very fitting for this coffee conversation. So looking forward to getting into some great chat.
Great.
Awesome. Delise, thanks for being with us.
You bet. Nice to meet you, Dan. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Can't wait to hear more about what you do. My background's a little bit varied. I cut my teeth at Southwest Airlines in the 1980s and 1990s, helped create their Southwest Airlines Leadership University and ran that for about 10 years. I left to form a competitor in the late 1990s, and we launched JetBlue Airways in 1999. And my responsibility there was, largely around culture and hiring and creating behaviors that work well in an organization. And the group that left Southwest Airlines in the late 1990s formed a consulting firm. So we've been doing culture work as it relates to values and behaviors since that time. And my latest venture is we created an organization called the Culture Think Tank. And it's a research/consulting firm that gathers data around what are the leadership behaviors that are moving the needle on culture the fastest, and how it relates to the well-being of an organization. We believe that culture is the collection of behaviors of the people within the organization. So that's what we focus on, is what are the behaviors that are making a culture better, stronger, more efficient, and more productive.
Awesome. Let's go to the third bold guy here online with us, Derek.
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk with both you, Delise, and Dan, and Stefan. Appreciate you hosting us. So I'm the CEO of a company called LifeGuides, and we've built a technology platform that connects people who have been through a life challenge and are now on the other side of people who are going through that experience, so they can receive peer mentorship and support and resources to work through that. And companies offer that to their employee families. And prior to LifeGuides, I had been one of the early angel investors in the organization because I believed really in the mission of helping people be at their best and using tech. And I built a previous startup called Scrimmage, which was an ed tech platform delivering content to people's mobile devices before mobile was a mainstream idea. And we did a lot of work in the healthcare space. So pharmaceutical, biotech, med device companies was our largest net segment, although we did some others as well. And we exited that company. And before that, I've had a few other ventures that I've been involved in different forms, predominantly around employee engagement and culture and leadership and technology. So it's nice to be with you guys.
Great.
Nice to meet
And
you.
Derek and Dan, you have a Minneapolis connection because when Derek was at Scrimmage, the company was headquartered in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time in the Twin Cities over the years. So
yeah. Did you ever get to First Avenue?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the, for those listening and maybe who don't know, it's one of the one of the best rock clubs, nightclubs in Minneapolis, and Prince really made it famous in Purple Rain. So that final performance of him on the stage singing Purple Rain was actually shot and filmed on the main stage in First Avenue. So it's an incredible place to see live music, and I've actually had I was able to play the stage a few times. So music is another part of my life for another coffee conversation.
Oh, we'll have to talk music at some point, Dan.
Yes.
I miss live music more than most things during this COVID experience.
Don't we all?
I know.
Yeah.
That's great. So what are you guys drinking?
Well, I have to be honest. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm on the East Coast, so my liquid might not come from a bean, but might come from a grape, although it sits in a mug. So cheers.
I love it.
That's awesome.
I'm usually I'm like about a half a pot through my coffee now, but actually I'm switching it up having tea right now. So there you go.
Good for you.
I brought the coffee mug, and I was planning to, we just moved into new offices and we don't have a coffee machine here yet. So I was going to go get coffee, but I ran out of time. So I'm drinking Aquavina in a coffee mug. Sorry. It still works. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
So
all good.
That's all good.
Yeah.
So in January 2021, right? It's been quite a year last year. So from your perspective, what changed from a business perspective, and what changed from a people perspective? Delise.
Well, in my work over the last 30 years, I'm going to date myself, I have worked with executives and argued with them, for lack of a better term, around the idea of employees needing to oftentimes work remote. And I had executive after executive say, I don't want that. It's not, they're not as productive. They can't do it. And, I would always argue for, equal and fair being different. And I pushed that as hard as I could. COVID hit and it changed everything. And what we've realized is we can be productive. We can be productive in non-traditional workspaces like we all are right now. I'm in South Carolina in Charleston. This isn't where I live, but I'm here for 2 months because if you can get here, you should. So it was an opportunity for me to work remotely. So I think we've proven and demonstrated that we can be productive in non-traditional environments. And we've asked our clients a question over the last several months through our technology saying, if we went back to a traditional workforce, COVID's gone, how many of you would be interested in working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 in an office setting? And of the thousands of employees that we have asked, fewer than 10% have said that they want to go back to a traditional work setting. So I think that's the game changer.
Shocks me.
It does. It did us too.
Yeah.
And I don't think they would want to go back. I don't think they want to stay home permanently, but I think a hybrid is going to be what we're going to need to be accustomed to.
Totally agree with you. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, well, Stanford did a study that I think pre-COVID we were around about 5% of the workforce was remote. Then we sort of peaked at about 40%. And my prediction and it's likely we're probably going to flatten out around 20%. So it will be a hybrid. And of course, for the service industry and those on the front lines, remote's not an option, but for those who have the opportunity to work remote, work is very, very different. And the workplace, once we start going back, is going to be very, very different, right? It's not going to be a place you come into work, close the door, go into your cube. It's going to be a place where you come to collaborate, to connect. And so I think this idea of how we flow in workspaces is going to become a big part of employee experience and whole person experience as well.
And we've also, we're introducing a generation into the workforce that kind of would have probably wanted this anyway. And one of the questions that we hear from college graduates when they're interviewing organizations that we never ask, it's tell me about your culture. So our younger generation is interested in flexibility, in being agile, in what your culture is about, and that's new and it's different, and we're going to have to adjust to that as well.
Yeah.
What's your take on this, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say from the last organization, around mobility, we were big advocates of remote work and work wherever you were. The idea that you could learn and work anywhere, everywhere. And now I think that very much come to the forefront. And to your point, Delise, the excuses are gone. All the reasons why they couldn't do it became a necessity that we have to do it right now to survive. And so it's amazing how quickly people can adapt if their backs are against the wall and there's no other choice, right? So it was, overnight, within weeks, people were like, changed their entire business model to go remote. And to your point, Dan, I think that as we return to what that future work environment looks like, from our team, I think, within LifeGuides, we get a lot done in the remote format. Like we do a lot using the tools, using Zoom, using, Asana and Slack and others. And I think what we really lack is the human connection, the relationship elements of just getting together, building the camaraderie, building the team, building the human relationship element outside of just getting deliverables done. And I think that's really, in my opinion, where the opportunity really presents itself, and around just the brainstorming and the alignment on core values. That's my belief on how that hybrid component is going to move going forward. So,
yeah, one thing to add to that, we have a partner that did some research, and we would all assume that that Gen Z would find it really easy because they, technology is sort of second nature, and using Zoom, going online, using mobile, using WhatsApp, whatever it might be. But it's that connection they've really been missing. I mean, think about this population. So in fact, kind of mental health, as we know, is sort of the number one priority this year in a lot of ways for organizations. It's actually affecting the younger generation more than anybody, because it's just many of them are living with roommates, many of them are still living at home. You know, many of them were just kind of building a social life, and now everything's changed. So that connection piece is so important.
It's funny from an introvert extrovert perspective too, because you know, half our population are extroverts and half are introverts, but our life pre-COVID had lent itself very much towards the extroverts. And we get our energy, we being extroverts, because in a shocking twist, I am one. We get our energy from that connection, and this Zoom environment just doesn't give you that connection. And introverts are like, that's not where I get my energy from anyway. So yeah. It's the world is tipped toward the introvert at long last.
Really interesting perspective, Delise. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's funny. I'm not really sure. I think I'm an extrovert.
Yeah, I am too.
So I love the extrovert side of it, and I miss that, but I've actually appreciated, you know, the remote world, especially when you're launching a new startup and a global startup. You don't have to be in planes every other day.
Yes.
Right.
You can move really fast. It's actually quite nice.
We're in the same boat on that. My calendar is more full now than it was before. There was more space before for thinking and reflecting, but now it's just really structured. So
yes,
yeah.
It's nice.
It's kind of like they got you. You're captured. So
yes.
Where else are you gonna go? Yes, I can catch you because I know where you're at.
Exactly.
There's going to be a lot of hugging. I think like when HR tech and conferences, like the idea, you know how we always be so exhausted after a full day conference, like a happy hour or dinner. It's when the world comes back, everyone's going to be like, please, happy hour starts at 4, dinner at 6. Let's do another dinner at 10. we're going to be all on catch up.
Yeah. The conference is an hour, then the happy hours are like
yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I know you're all passionate about culture. And so first of all, I would say, you know, what is now your definition of culture? Has it changed over the past 12 months, or is it the same? And where do you see the notion of culture evolving in the next year, or maybe even in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, for me, I've been preaching culture for 30 years to largely an audience who wasn't exactly sure what I was talking about. And as soon as we didn't have people in front of us, culture has become the word that everyone wants to speak about. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have always defined, we being the people with whom we work, culture is the collection of behaviors of the people within an organization. So if how we behave is what our culture is, and it's an egalitarian approach to culture, meaning that it's not the executive's responsibility. Culture is everyone's responsibility, and everyone has an equal hand in it. So for us, it doesn't change anything, but what it does is it says, what are the behaviors that you want to see your employees doing on a regular basis? So if we understand what high performance was when we were at work, it's different. The behaviors are different. The way I used to do my job behaviorally is different than the way I do my job now behaviorally. So by definition, your culture changes because the behaviors change. So it's a whole shift. I've had plenty of clients who've taken this opportunity to really improve their organizational culture or focus on it for the first time, and others who've, you know, largely decided not to focus on it. But I tell my clients all the time that you either define your culture or it will define itself. Yeah. So I think it's an actually great time for organizations to say, what do we want? What are the behaviors we want to see? Let's identify them. Let's performance manage to them. Let's reward and recognize to them. And our culture becomes better immediately.
Yeah, to kind of add on that, I've always believed that culture is the collective actions of what we do, right? And what's being right. The actions that you take. And to take it a step further back, it's about the values that you know the team and leadership have assigned. And in my opinion, that's been a huge driver in building culture, is that it gives people, when the mission and vision of the organization is clear, and the values by which the team is being measured against how we act and how those actions align with what we say. That is really, in my opinion, what creates healthy cultures. In my experience, that's what creates healthy cultures.
Sure, sure. Behaviors, actions, same thing. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I would do, same exact definition. I mean, for me, culture is the things we do, the behaviors, how we act, the behaviors that become a part of your organization, but it's also the things we do consistently. So I'm a big believer and right, there's an old saying that, you don't really start changing behaviors until it becomes second nature. And so I think it's those small things that you do, and if you do them consistently over and over again, you actually start to feel like it's making a difference for you personally and then the people around you. And I think that's how movements happen, and that's how change happens. And I feel like organizations are really triple downing on culture now, right? And
Sure.
I actually am really thinking about it. I've started talking about it as character, almost organizational character. So what is the character of an organization? And character is typically defined as an individual, but I'm sort of thinking as an organization, right? As the collective of behaviors that we want to see. So this is the character of an organization. So and a big part of what we do is we believe organizations are responsible, and we believe organizations have an obligation, right, to give back to their employees, to give back to the communities around them. And this is a big part of how culture is redefining itself. It's not just what you do in the workplace, but it's also what you allow people to do outside of the workplace and support it, and kind of gets back to that whole person concept too, right? Really embracing people for who they are, their beliefs, and we're in a very polarized world right now too. So how do you sort of manage people's connectivity when we have extraordinarily different and polarized viewpoints? So there's a link. It's a real exciting time to be in this space, and a real exciting time to reimagine and rethink how we define culture and how.
Well, and Dan, I like that. Dan, I like that consistency of behavior thing. I talk about cultural fitness. How fit is your culture? I'm a boxer, so when before I step into the ring, I better have done the work I need to do before I do that. And in order, you don't work out one time and say, okay, I've achieved fitness. It's those, the plan works if you work the plan, but you've got to do it again and again and again and again ad nauseum. And the same thing organizationally, those cultures that do it well, we have clients who they have a culture department. They have budgets assigned to it. They have employees assigned to it. And if we do it that way and we approach it like it is its own department, it lives and breathes, and it's not that department's responsibility per se, but someone has assignment to it and to make sure it gets done.
Yeah. I like the idea of character, and we often says that an individual's character shows up in difficult times. So do you see that actually the character of organizations have changed or have been on the spotlight depending on how those organizations responded to COVID and the necessity to work remotely, and just the ability to support their people as they were going through those difficult times? So do you see that the character of these organizations has been on the spotlight because of this? And then for those who've been struggling, how they can pivot into more of a positive side? What are your thoughts?
So my feeling, go ahead, Dan.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, you go. I
was gonna say, my personal feeling is that because this was 2020 was a year unlike so many others, I think that leaders were confronted with needing to step up their game. And I think that anyways, aside from survival, I think corporate leaders have done a lot on a big picture. But the real question is in the implementation of that and the day-to-day stuff. And I think the next 12, as things do kind of return to whatever the new normal will be or whatever the future looks like, I think the spotlight then, when people have some perspective and look back, that's really where the spotlight comes in. So I think that I think that on the whole, people have started, especially in the context of business, I believe people have stepped up, and there's a lot more talk right now around for this exact reason, around employee well-being, around culture, the recognition have to do differently. People are looking at incentives, they're looking at their employee families differently. But now it comes down to, as things get better, that's when the spotlight comes on. Will they continue to live in that? Will they continue to down the path that they've started on, or will people fall back into old habits? That's really where I think the truth comes to, personally.
Yeah, it's that sustainability, right? I mean, I think we saw companies rise to the occasion, like you said. I mean, words that we overuse, like humility, empathy, agility, right? Those are words we've all liked to use in the industry, but they became very, very real and over the in 2020. And I joke, the question we used to ask each other in the workplace, or still do, and how are you doing? And your response might be, I'm doing great, good. You move on to things. And now when I ask you that question, I truly care about what your answer is, and you're going to give me a very honest response, right? So I think that the conversation about caring and love, and these are words we don't use enough in the workplace. Maybe we feel like it's that separation between these are sort of relationship human characters that live sort of more in the family. But I actually think these words, we need to start to become more and more comfortable with it in the workplace, and really, really care about those around us, because it's tough times, and times aren't going to get all that easier in a lot of ways. But it's, as we know, the ideas of togetherness, the collective is more powerful than the individual. So I think organizations rose to the occasion. Then we started to fall a little bit because it's exhausting to keep it up. But I think that's how we're going to reimagine in 2021.
And Dan, following up to that, the big change to me, the kind of fulcrum on that, I believe, is for the first time, employees had always felt like, I may need to come to my supervisor or boss because they know more about what is going on than I do. And I think that changed. Suddenly, employees knew, you don't know how to do this remote thing any more than I do.
Yeah.
And so everybody just kind of came from the same place. Like, I know you don't know how to manage from afar because you've never done it. I don't know how to work from afar because I've never done it. So there was more of a lockstep opportunity for, I've just seen, walls kind of break down, and the need for communication is still high, but there's more of an empathy and understanding that we are literally in this together, and no one has a playbook, no one has an answer, no one's done this before. And I think that we're all in it together kind of thing has been very heartwarming and helpful.
Yeah, I agree. For me, the biggest lesson from last year was really the sort of normalization of, hey, that's okay not feeling okay. It's okay that I don't have the answers to everything. And it's okay if I do ask for help, or if I look for guidance, right? And I believe that the expectations from the workforce are going to be even higher because of this. Now they will want to see their organizations, or future organizations, really not just talk about what they do, but really show about what they're doing for the employees. Derek was talking about the actions earlier on, and I really believe that that's how organizations and leaders are going to be judged. It's not so much by the talk, but really by the actions. So do you see that sense of vulnerability and that sense of candid conversations being a long-term cultural shift in organizations, or we just because that's what it is today, but then we're just going to go back to whatever it was before when COVID is over?
Yeah, I think it's created a collegial approach that would be very hard to take away. I think for anyone to go from the collegial approach back to some authoritarian, I don't think it'd be a very hard climb. And that opportunity for us to demonstrate empathy and to listen, and to Dan's point, when I ask you, how are you doing? It used to be, I'm good, I'm great. The question was really not sincere, nor was the answer. And now people have lost loved ones, that you don't know how they're faring in this environment. So there's an empathy and a caring that is, it would be hard to disavow people of at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that sustainability piece of this is always challenging. But I agree. It's going to be impossible, I think, to go completely back. But I do think it's going to require reminding every now and then of what we've been through and where we're going. and that's that behavior change, right? And that's that consistency over and over again. So I think it's really important for everybody to continue to make sure we keep, the focus on this idea of how important empathy is, and continue to talk about stories of how we work together and how we've accomplished things together, because it is easy to fall back into old habits. So my feeling is, and I'm an optimist, let me be really, really clear, probably to a fault, but one thing I don't want to see is us to feel like, oh, we're there. We figured out how to kind of work remotely. We figured out how to be empathetic. So I think it's just commitment, all of us as practitioners in the space, in organizations, to continue to really, really champion that in their organizations. I mean, that's when I speak with leaders, that's the one thing, what are you doing consistently to make sure you're communicating, you're empowering those around you, you're building teams that feel safe, trust each other. And the question that was brought up earlier is that being comfortable by saying, I don't know, right? The three words that leaders need to be comfortable with. It's that, I don't know, we're going to figure this out together, or I hear you, right? But I don't know. And this expectation that leaders should be all knowing and sort of always know the answers is just a thing of the past. So I'm optimistic, but I completely agree. It's just continuing to put in the work.
Well, and to your point, Dan, on empathy, I listened to a podcast recently where Alan Alda interviewed Brene Brown, who I could listen to either one of those people talk all day. And he was asking her about, empathy. And one of the first hurdles that they work through when they're trying to get people to understand how to be more empathetic is your perspective. And I think the thing with COVID is everyone's perspective changed at the same time. And I don't know when we can say, short of a world war, when all of our perspectives shifted at the same time. So the opportunity to build empathy, since our collective perspectives changed, is really high. So if we can capitalize on that, so the opportunity for us to understand empathy better by understanding the perspective change is high and great. And I think that's a great opportunity for us as leaders to take advantage of this perspective shift.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I mean, I think to both of your comments, as we're going back to in the future, literally, bringing people back together, I think it's exactly that acknowledgement that we're not there, right? This is a whole new reality. We're not back in time. We're in a whole new reality, a whole new context, and there's all new perspectives that are going to be shaped because of this. And that shared empathy actually gives us a platform to build something better, literally. I mean, it's literally, we can start building organizations differently. I think personally, and Delise, you and I have talked about this, there's new metrics that we can create. There's all new standards beyond what we historically used to measure success within organizations that we could start to use and that we would never have even considered 12 months ago, such as how remote teams are collaborating, how engaged, like not just talking about engagement, but really seeing, again, action. What are our teams doing? What are they creating? What are they doing? How are they approaching problems differently? These are things that we're starting to be able to see and cultivate information on. I think that's a really powerful opportunity.
Yeah, well said. Completely agree.
Another thing that was really interesting to me was the fact that, we've talked for a long time, the migration from work-life balance to work-life integration, meaning you can work anywhere, you can work whenever you want. But even more and more now, for me, work-life integration is like anything or everything that happens in your life has a connection or an impact on how you perform at work, and vice versa. And then work-life integration is much bigger than just work whenever you want, wherever you want, or whenever you want. It's more about approaching the entire human being and being able to develop a frame and an experience so that the contributor or the employee is feeling supported and valued when at work, but also outside of work. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would just say, I think there was, so I've spent 20 years working often in the employee engagement space. And I know, Stefan, you've heard me talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
What engages individuals is drastically changing, right? This concept that, well, I plan to hang around the company for a while, or I believe in senior leadership, and I like my manager, and benefits are good, right? Those things all need to be there. I'm not suggesting they're not important, but they are clearly not enough. And this whole person mentality is bigger, right? People want to be connected to an organization that, number one, is on the right side of history, right? Number two, gives back to the community, leaves the world a better place. And I'm not trying to sound too overly, ambitious here, but it's the small little things that organizations do, and that really matters. If you talk to young workers, they're not going to go take a job simply for pay, or simply for career ladder growth. They really want to be a part of something bigger. So that's because it connects to their whole person, what defines them and their DNA. With that said, I'm also really careful not to say everybody wants that, or everybody wants to merge their personal life with their work. I think it's a balance. So the responsibility that organizations have is to really, when we talk about a whole person, is to understand it's very, very different amongst everybody, right? One person might want to really bring every piece of themselves to work, and that connection is great. We need to honor that and respect that. Other people might want to keep a complete separation, and that's great too. But most importantly is everyone does need to be connected and rally behind the larger purpose and mission of an organization, because that's what really connects people. And I think ultimately organizations who stand for something, have a much longer play and a long-term success.
And I would add to that, Dan, I agree with that. I've worked with organizations helping create their values for the better part of 25 plus years, and I've largely said that your values don't change over time. It could be time for some organizations to dust those off, look at them, and just say, do they still represent what we need to represent going forward because of this tectonic shift in everything? Do we need to add something? Do we need to rethink this? But I think it's a good exercise to sit down and say, do the values that brought us up to this point, are those going to be the values that are going to carry us forward? And be willing to say, maybe we need to think a little bit differently, change it a little bit. And, prior to that, I would have said, those are your values and they're in stone and whatever else. And I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I don't think everyone needs to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think it would be time to look at them and just say, are they still serving us well? And will these current values serve us into the future?
Yeah, I think the word you said there just on this topic is about adding, right? For values in particular, because I do think in many ways you're right, Delise. Values are foundational, right? So it's really
right.
How do you add in a way that use the word integrates, it bridges between the values that got you here and the values that are needed to continue. Like, how do you expand the value? How do we grow?
Does it cover it all?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and you may look at it and say they do, and we're good, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're overhauling them, but I think it's worth the conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing when there's new information. It's wise to reevaluate your perspective in the context of new information, right? So that might be part of it. And I appreciate your perspective, both of you, on that. And then obviously, Stefan, to your question, I'm biased that's what our whole model is built on, this whole person, right? That the idea of what happens at work affects you at home, and what happens at home affects you at work, and they are inseparable. As human beings, it's in our psyche, so it needs to be addressed if you want to optimize for your employees' optimal performance and happiness wherever their environment is. And they will, if you give them the resources and tools to develop it, they will, because we do want to grow. I mean, I was writing down in summaries what you guys were talking about: values, community, legacy, learning and growth, purpose. I mean, those were pretty common themes in everything that all three of us have been saying. So, I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
So just to summarize the conversation, if there was one piece of advice or one piece of wisdom that we like to bring to the conversation today, what that would be?
Good question.
I'll come back and just say the humility to recognize that we don't have all the answers, and it's okay for all people, leaders and team members, whatever the role, we're all human and we're all learning, and to be willing to recognize we need support to continue to grow and to be the best version of our teams and ourselves and whatever we're here to do in the world.
You know, I guess I would say that similar. I mean, I think it's if we think about this concept of organizational character, and you think about the individual and how we grow, and how we reflect, right? How we individually. I mean, think about anyone listening to this. Think about moments in your life you looked in the mirror, not physically at your reflection. We do that too, but more so in the mirror of how did I get here and where am I going? And I think it's that responsibility for organizations to and it comes back to the earlier point around addressing values, to sort of say, what do we stand for? And are we getting it right? And the willingness to say we're not in some cases, and being bold enough to change and to be willing to change. And then people will follow, right? People and your people will follow organizations that make bold moves and create this change that's necessary. So to me, that's, you know, now is the opportunity, and now is the time to be bold.
And I would say that it's the opportunity for us now to really listen to our employees and to our customers, to ask what they need, kind of we're all in this together, and what do we need to do to create the best environment for you as an employee? And then what do we need to do to create the best experience for you as a customer? And I think we've kind of largely, we've maybe paid lip service to that, but I think now we're not anymore. We have to really listen and shift and be willing to adjust. And kind of to my earlier point, that there was some staunch resistance to, it can't be done that way. We can't do that. It's never been done. And that core tenet, I think, is what's been, you know, that's crumbled. So it allows us not to have to bow to that anymore and say, why not? Why can't we do it that way?
You know, I love that. I love that why not statement. You know, it's funny. Think about what we had to go through. And I think, Delise, you brought this up earlier. Has it been 11 months, 10 months? The change that the world's gone through, and how quickly we rallied together, and how everything changed and everyone sort of went with it. And when organizations say now, well, it's too much disruption, we can't do that. We can't do that. Employees expect this. I'm like, no, not anymore. Like, it's amazing what, if we put our minds to it, yes, we can change, and we got to do it, versus this idea that we just have to make these little tweaks here and there. And it comes out of fear. Right. And now I think everything's changed. And now we have the best case study, the best example. Any of us who believe in transformation and change, we have the best case study. Like, look what the world went through starting March 1st, you know.
And Dan, I would guess that all of us in this coffee clutch, if you will, and anyone listening, if you would have told us, roll back the clock 18 months, that we would have endured and survived and thrived in this context, it would have been, it sounds dystopian and post-apocalyptic. I don't think any of us could have really gotten our heads around it, and we did. And you know, with due respect to those people who've lost lives and lost loved ones, and rallied in support of you know, everything that healthcare workers are doing to get us through this, we're coming through it as strong as we possibly can.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with the three of you, and enjoy the rest of your drink, whatever it might be.
I think I might enjoy mine more than you guys, but all right.
And I'm glad that you know, you were able to connect the three of you, especially Dan, as you didn't know Delise and Derek. So thanks again. And talk to you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and thanks, Stefan, for bringing us together. Great conversation.
Absolutely.
Stay fuerte. Stay
nice
safe.
To meet you both.
You too, Dan. See you, Delise.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in. Check out the Human Rebellion platform to join our online community, access our blog and podcast episodes, or to register to upcoming events. Go to www.humanrebellion.com.